My parents refused to take me to the hospital when I went into labor. They said, "We're busy with your brother's engagement party, figure it out." I had to give birth all alone. After that, I cut them off. 3 months later, my mom called me, sounding scared. "Why is the bank freezing our account?" she asked. I smiled and said, "Ask your favorite child." Growing up, I never felt like I truly belonged in my family. My younger brother, Daniel, was their favorite. They always praised him and cared about what he wanted. I was always an afterthought, but nothing prepared me for what happened when I went into labor. I got pregnant at 21. It wasn't planned, and the baby's father left as soon as he found out. I was scared but ready to face the challenge. I thought having a baby would make my parents finally see me and care about me. I was so wrong. Daniel got engaged around the same time I was close to giving birth. My parents were thrilled and threw him a big, fancy engagement party. Meanwhile, I was ignored. On the day of the party, I started feeling pain. Then my water broke in the living room. I panicked and called my mom, who was already at the party. "Mom, it's happening, I need to go to the hospital." She replied, sounding irritated, "We're really busy right now, can't you figure it out?" I was shocked. "Mom, please," I begged. But she cut me off. "I can't deal with this right now, call an Uber or something, we'll talk later." Then she hung up. I stood there, feeling like I'd been struck by lightning. They weren't coming, they didn't care, I was completely alone. I ordered an Uber while trying not to scream from the pain. The driver looked nervous the whole ride. I barely made it to the hospital in time and gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. No one was there to support me, not my mom, dad, or brother. I looked at my daughter's tiny fingers holding mine and made a decision. I was done with them. The next day, I blocked their numbers. When they tried to contact me, I ignored them. When they showed up to visit, I refused to see them. Then, 3 months later, my mom called, sounding desperate. "Why is the bank freezing our account?" My parents had been using my trust fund for years to pay for things, including Daniel's engagement party, but once I turned 22, the trust fund became fully mine. With the help of a lawyer, I took control of my money and cut them off. I coldly replied to my mom's call, "Ask your favorite child," and hung up. For a few days, everything was quiet. Then, one morning, I opened my door and found my mom standing there. She looked terrible, messy hair, no makeup, and her face full of anger. "How dare you, Sophia?" she snapped. "You froze our money, are you insane?" I laughed. "Our money? No, Mom, my money, the money you weren't supposed to touch in the first place." She scoffed. "Do you have any idea what you've done? We have bills, we have responsibilities." "You and Daniel," I said, "because let's be honest, Mom, that's who you really care about. You can't pay for his wedding anymore, can you?" My mom flinched but quickly tried to act tough. "That's not the point. We're a family, families share. You're punishing us over a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I said, my voice shaking but firm. "You left me to give birth alone, Mom. You told me to figure it out while you hosted his party. So, no, I don't owe you anything." Her eyes turned cold. For a moment, I thought she might slap me. Instead, she did something worse. She smiled. It was a mean, icy smile. "Oh, honey," she said softly, "you have no idea what you've just started." Then she left. I didn't know what she meant, until 3 days later when I got served court papers. The lawsuit. My parents were suing me. They claimed they'd been using my trust fund because they thought I was fine with it. Now they were arguing that, since the money was spent on family expenses, I had no right to cut them off. It was ridiculous. But the worst part? Daniel was part of the lawsuit. I thought maybe he'd say this was too much, but no, he was right there in the legal papers, saying that because my parents used the money to raise me when I was a kid, I owed them. I wanted to scream. But instead, I called my lawyer. The family smear campaign started while I was preparing my defense. My mom began spreading lies about me. She told everyone in the family I was greedy and ungrateful, that I had taken their money when they needed it most. Relatives started calling. Some wanted to hear my side of the story, but others just yelled at me, calling me selfish and cruel. The worst call was from my grandmother's sister, Aunt Lydia. She was furious. "Your parents took care of you for years," she snapped, "and this is how you repay them? By making them suffer?" I was so angry I almost broke my teeth from clenching them. Making them suffer? They left me to give birth alone. Aunt Lydia, they didn't care about me, not then, not now. She scoffed. Oh, please, they had an event to host. You could have waited. I hung up on her without saying another word. By then, I was beyond angry. I was done. If my parents wanted to play dirty, then I was ready to fight back. I wasn't helpless anymore. I had my own lawyer, my own money, and, most importantly, I had proof. Since I had been getting ready to take control of my trust fund for months, I had all the evidence, bank statements, financial records, and proof of every dollar they took. I decided to countersue, not just to protect my money, but to get back every cent they stole over the years. When my parents got my lawsuit, the calls and texts started pouring in. My mom's messages were angry and full of insults, like, "How could you do this to your own family?" My dad, who'd been mostly quiet, finally called. "Sophia," he said, sounding tired, "let's be reasonable, we're your parents, you can't do this to us." I took a deep breath. "You did this to yourselves." He sighed, "Your mom's just emotional, you know how she is, she doesn't mean it." "She meant every word," I snapped, "just like she meant it when she left me alone during labor." Silence, then his voice turned cold. "You're making a mistake." And he hung up. A few weeks into the legal fight, my lawyer found something strange, another savings account in my name that I didn't know about. We looked into it and discovered my grandparents had left me more money than I thought. My parents had been secretly taking money from that account for years. This wasn't a family issue anymore, it was theft. My lawyer quickly decided to push for fraud charges. When my parents found out, my mom completely broke down. She showed up at my apartment, banging on the door like crazy. "Sophia, open this door," she yelled. I let her scream for a while before opening it just a crack. She looked wild, hair a mess, face pale. "Why are you doing this?" she hissed. "Do you want us to end up homeless, ruined? You stole from me, Mom, 4 years. She rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic. We used that money to take care of you." "No," I said firmly, "you used it to throw parties for Daniel, to go on vacations, to buy your stuff, not mine." She clenched her jaw. "Fine, maybe we borrowed a little here and there, but we're family. Family doesn't leave you alone when you're giving birth. Family doesn't steal from you, and family doesn't sue you for taking back what's yours." Her face twisted with anger. "You always were selfish." I smiled. "And you always thought you'd get away with everything." Before she could say anything else, I shut the door in her face. I expected my parents to keep fighting. What I didn't expect was what Daniel did next. Turns out, Daniel's fiancée had no idea about the lawsuit until recently. She called me and asked if we could talk. We met at a coffee shop, and she told me Daniel had lied to her. "He said you offered your trust fund to help pay for the wedding and that you were happy to share," she said, gripping her coffee cup so hard her knuckles turned white. "I told him if he doesn't drop this lawsuit, the wedding is off," she continued. "I'm not marrying into a family that does this." I just stared at her, surprised she actually had a backbone. A few days later, Daniel texted me. "I hope you're happy, you ruined my life." No apology, no regret, just blame. I blocked his number. At this point, my parents were trapped. The fraud case was gaining traction. Daniel's engagement was falling apart, and with their money cut off, they were drowning. Then, out of nowhere, my dad texted me. "Let's talk, no lawyers, just family." I stared at the screen, knowing this was their last attempt to manipulate me, but I agreed to meet them, just to see them squirm. We met at a fancy restaurant, my mom's choice, of course. They were already sitting when I walked in. Mom had her arms crossed, looking angry, while Dad looked tired and worn out. "All right, talk," I said, not even bothering with pleasantries. Dad leaned forward. "Sophia, this has gone too far. We're family. You're tearing this family apart over money." I let out a bitter laugh. "No, you tore this family apart when you left me alone to give birth, when you stole from me, when you sued me." My mom scoffed. "Oh, please, we took care of you for years. We deserve something for that." "You had a child," I shot back. "That was your responsibility. You don't get paid for raising your own kid." She flinched, but I kept going. "You stole my money for years, lied to me, and then tried to destroy me for taking back what's mine, so now you don't get to play the victims." For the first time, my dad looked ashamed. His eyes dropped like he couldn't even face me. But my mother, she doubled down, leaning in, her voice sharp. She said, "You don't understand. We needed that money. Without it, we're ruined." I tilted my head. "Oh?" And whose fault is that? Silence. Then, in a whisper, she said, yours. I laughed, a harsh, bitter laugh that made her face twist in anger. That's rich. You really think I should feel guilty after everything you did? She slammed her hand on the table, making the silverware rattle. People started to glance our way. I raised you, she snapped. I gave you everything. I stood up. No, Mom, you gave everything to Daniel, and now he's left you to clean up his mess, just like always. Her face turned pale, and as if summoned, Daniel walked in. He looked awful, red eyes, messy hair. His fiancée must have finally called off the wedding because he looked completely lost, but when he saw me, his face twisted with rage. This is your fault, he spat. You ruined everything. I crossed my arms. You did that all by yourself. He stormed over, fists clenched. You think you're some victim? You think you're better than us? No, I said calmly, but I am free. His jaw tightened. You're nothing. You were never supposed to have that money. You were never supposed to. Never supposed to what? I interrupted. Stand up for myself? Take back what was mine? You're selfish, he growled. A selfish, bitter little. Enough, my dad cut in. We all turned to him, and for the first time, I saw something real in his expression, regret, deep, crushing regret. This isn't her fault, he said softly, it's ours. My mother's head snapped toward him. Excuse me? He sighed, rubbing his temples. We did this. We spoiled Daniel. We enabled him. We stole from our own daughter and acted like it was all right. We left her alone when she needed us the most. He looked at me, his face shattered with guilt. I'm sorry, Sophia. That, more than anything, stunned me. My mother was furious. You're apologizing to her? After everything? Yes, my dad said, because she was right. The lawsuit was dropped a week later. I didn't forgive them completely, but I let the fraud charges go under one condition: they had to pay back every cent they stole. It took years. Daniel never spoke to me again. My mother never forgave me either. She still plays the victim, telling anyone who'll listen that I ruined the family. My dad tried. He sent letters, called on birthdays, but I never let him fully back in. Some wounds just don't heal. And me? I raised my daughter in peace. I built a life for us. And I never once looked back.